Part 53. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 542. The two were startled, and then Zhao San kicked the baby's head to pieces and cursed, "I am your father." Ah! Seeing Zhao San take action, the other dolls let out piercing screams, jumped up and rushed towards the two of them. Demon Flame. Seeing this, Su Tong waved his arm, and the red hellfire and sword energy cooperated to form a half-curved flaming sword light, instantly smashing the dolls in front of him. These dolls, which are not even low-level demons, are at best just a bunch of evil spirits. They disappear in an instant under the burning fire of hell. Boom! But at this moment, the ground beneath their feet suddenly trembled, and a crack tore open from the ground. Upon seeing this, the two people immediately jumped onto the roof. Only then did they see that the surroundings were already a ruined world. The huge Amontes was covered with thick white dust and magma, and bones could be seen everywhere on the ground. Inside the world. Seeing this, Zhao Sanyi frowned and explained to Su Tong, "It should be some kind of magic circle that pulled us into the other world." In fact, without Zhao San's explanation, Su Tong can probably understand that the world in front of him is similar to reality and reality. The difference is that this is not a personal effort, but with the help of the power of the magic circle. Actually, it has the same nature as Yin-Yang Mountain of Jui Ghost King. The only difference is that the Yin-Yang Mountain of Jui Netherworld Ghost King belongs to the Cave Heaven Blessed Land, and this place seems to be connected to the Netherworld. Kaka kaka. At this time, the crack in the ground became bigger and bigger, and with a loud roar, a red giant of flesh and blood stood up from the crack. The red muscles had no skin and fascia, and even blood vessels could be directly seen, but protruding bone spurs covered the giant's body. What's even weirder is the head, which has no mouth or ears, only dense eyes. Now we are in a bit of trouble. Looking at the monster standing up from the ground, Zhao San looked serious. Su Tong looked at the demon rising from the ground in front of him, and couldn't help but look sideways at Zhao San, and asked tentatively, "Don't tell me that you can't defeat it." Zhao San snorted and explained, "Fighting is not my strong point. Even a certified team cannot all focus on combat. Everyone needs to have a specialty. The last time we said we would help Su Tong deal with an intermediate demon, we agreed that 3 people would help Su Tong hunt and deal with it. Now there is only one Zhao San left, so naturally it is not as easy as thought." However, Zhao San narrowed his eyelids and changed his tone, "But it's not that I can't beat him, it's just that it's a bit troublesome to fight." Roar. While the two were talking, a huge mouth began to open under the demonized Matthew's head. As his eyes moved, a black palm suddenly stretched out from the ground and grabbed the two of them. Separate. When Zhao San and Su Tong saw this, they immediately separated, one on the left and the other on the right. Swish swish. The black palm was long and thin, like a baby's hand, but it emerged from the soil and grabbed it quickly. Su Tong waved his hand to summon the hellfire. Red flames surged out and instantly engulfed the black palms in front of them. However, these black palms are immune to hellfire. They are hell creatures themselves, and hellfire does no harm to them at all, just like splashing water on a big tree, it does not hurt or itch. This surprised Su Tong, and at the same time he felt troubled. Hellfire was his main attack method, but it suddenly had no effect, which inevitably made Su Tong feel a little uncomfortable. Immediately, he could only use the Lost Tracks and Leopard Soul Cloak to quickly dodge the range covered by these black hands. However, when Matthew's eyes moved towards Su Tong, a steady stream of strange black hands appeared on the ground and chased Su Tong. Seeing that he could not avoid these strange palms by moving left and right, Su Tong simply stopped hiding and summoned a paper sword in his hand. A faint fluorescent light flashed from the palm and was embedded in the sword body. Then he saw a layer of light rising above the sword body. Hazy light. The paper sword blessed by the merits of incense was swung in Su Tong's hand, bursting out with invisible sword energy, and immediately cut off all the black hands in front of him. On the other side, Zhao San had already rushed towards Matthew. I saw him summoning a black rooster, riding on the rooster, quickly dodging the black hands attacking him, leaping up in the air, with his hands across his chest, and then he pushed hard. The armor suddenly exploded. Ink bomb. In an instant, the fragments of the armor formed black ink clouds all around, and exploded one after another. Boom boom boom. The black ink cloud covered Matthew's sight. Meow. A black cat emerged from Zhao San's shoulder, then jumped to Matthew's head, and countless bone stimulation shot into the black cat's body. The black cat ignored these bone spurs. After flying down on Matthew's head, it hung in mid-air above Matthew and turned into a cartoon black cat-headed pocket watch. There is also a series of numbers on it, which are beating slowly one by one. It seemed that every time it beat, the pocket watch swelled invisibly. No matter how much Matthew tried to smash the cat's head, neither the bone spurs nor his huge palms could do any harm to this thing. Seeing that he could not destroy this strange thing, Matthew simply turned his attention back to Zhao San. But at this time, Zhao San was already riding on the big rooster again. The rooster flapped its wings, rolled up huge dust on the ground, and flew with lightning at a speed that was simply staggering. Two thick and powerful chicken claws stepped on the ground, making a squeaking sound, and even left an afterimage on the spot. He rushed to Su Tong's side almost in the blink of an eye. Come up. Zhao San stretched out his hand towards Su Tong. Su Tong raised his hand and jumped up. At the same time, he waved the invisible sword energy and split the surrounding black hands into a path. In the flash of lightning, the two of them rode on the rooster. Quickly he distanced himself from Matthew. After Su Tong sat firmly, he looked back at the strange cat-faced pocket watch above Matthew's head. What is that? My skill will cause slight damage every second, but as long as it is delayed long enough, the damage will become stronger and stronger. Zhao San took out a submachine gun from the props book, which was filled with silver bullets specially made by the church. While firing, he explained to Su Tong. This is why Zhao San would say that it is a bit troublesome, because he himself prefers the auxiliary summoning system. In terms of fighting, apart from the holy light system at the top of the team, the mutant system of MRS Enman is the strongest. However, although Zhao San's ability is very strange, it is not without any limitations. On the contrary, this ability is very limited. For example, the distance between each other cannot exceed 150 meters. At the same time, Zhao San can no longer use other attack skills. And this time is directly proportional to the damage. The longer the time, the stronger the damage will be. The bullet hit Matthew's body and bounced away without leaving any wounds. However, Zhao San did this not to hurt Matthew, but to speed up time. If you want to speed up, you can only keep attacking Matthew. Any attack will speed up the beating of time. If it can cause damage, time will also increase by leaps and bounds. As long as the time reaches 1000, a severe damage will occur. After hearing Zhao San's explanation, Su Tong immediately understood what Zhao San meant, which was to find ways to delay time. With the speed of the black rooster he summoned, it was impossible for the giant Matthew in front of them to catch up with them. The two of them could use kite-flying tactics to fight guerrilla around Matthew. Not only is this safe, but the cost and consumption are also minimal. Tactical perfection. Can. Su Tong raised his head and looked at the dim world in the distance, and the ominous feeling in his heart became stronger and stronger. Boy, get out of here quickly. Amrita's voice appeared in Su Tong's mind. Su Tong's restlessness woke him up from his sleep. When he became aware of his surroundings, his voice became louder. Don't forget, your heart. Amrita reminded Su Tong that this is the other world, which is actually the underworld. If other demons are aware of Lilith's heart, these demons will definitely chase him crazily. This is where Su Tong's uneasiness comes from. It seems that the longer time delays, the greater the possibility of being exposed here. An intermediate demon is already so troublesome, but if it is a high-level demon, it may be even more dangerous. Understood. Su Tong narrowed his eyelids, not daring to hide his clumsiness anymore. He put away the pistol in his hand, patted Zhao San and said, "I'll do the damage, you help me close the distance." Zhao San was startled, but without thinking much, he drove the Black Rooster in a drifting U-turn in front and rushed straight towards Matthew. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 543. The door to the room was gently pushed open a crack. "Come in." Hearing the call in the room, Aimee hesitated for a moment, then walked in with coffee. As soon as she entered the room, her eyes noticed the picture reflected in the crystal ball, but she only glanced at it and quickly looked away. Freshly brewed coffee. She put the coffee on the table and was about to turn around and leave. "Are you ready to leave now? Don't you want to look at it for a while longer?" The white-haired young man behind her called her, pointed at the crystal ball in front of her, and joked, "Let's take a look, maybe we won't see you next time." Aimee frowned, holding the hem of her skirt tightly with both hands as if she was struggling. After being stiff for a moment, she still strode out. He didn't stop until he reached the door. "I'll make a bet with you." "Bet?" Mr. Tai raised his eyelids slightly, picked up the coffee and took a sip on the corner of his lips. "Would you like to bet that he won't die?" "No, I bet he will win." Aimee turned around and looked into Mr. Tai's eyes, her eyes full of determination. "He will win. Not only will he win this script, but he will also win you." As she spoke, Aimee glanced at the crystal ball. In the picture in the crystal ball, Su Tong was standing on the back of the Black Rooster, with the magic bell in his left hand and the sword energy in his right hand. The fire of hell is useless, so use the sword energy turned from incense to strike down one after another. With the blessing of incense merit, every sword energy struck down, causing a huge wound to be torn open on Matthew's body. I have to say that this thing is like snake oil. It has no effect on living people, but it is extremely useful against demons and ghosts. The only drawback is that there are so few. If it were before the Yin-Yang cave, Su Tong could kill this guy just by hitting him with incense. But the Yin and Yang cave group had basically consumed all the incense and merit, leaving only these. Da Yat and the others had to spit out the remaining incense and merit, plus the little food stored under Su Tong's hand, and scrape together. From Matthew's huge body became a target. He roared unwillingly and kept shooting out countless bone spurs. But unfortunately, the Black Rooster ran too fast. It was not only fast, but also weird and changeable. Even though Matthew's eyes were always on the Black Rooster, his reaction speed could not keep up with the rhythm at all. As Su Tong's attack speed began to increase, the numbers on the cartoon pocket watch above Matthew's head also began to increase rapidly. This invisible injury made Matthew crazy with anger. "You have no chance. The Lord of Darkness is destined to come to the world, and the 7 sacrifices have returned. You are destined to fall into the abyss of hell." Matthew muttered to himself. It seems to be telling a prophecy that is about to come true. At this time, I saw him stamp his feet violently, and accompanied by a huge roar, a huge shockwave was set off from under his feet. Not good. Seeing the shockwave visible to the naked eye, Zhao San's expression changed slightly and he put his hands on his chest. Heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and stomach, the 5 internal organs returned to their proper places. Zhao San recited a spell in his mouth, and along with the spell, the huge black claws tore from his back for an instant. The 2 of them were instantly thrown into the air by the shock wave. Looking at the picture in the crystal ball, Mr. Tai held his chin with one hand, picked up 2 fingers and rubbed the dust on it. Just him? Why? I can kill him right now. That's why you don't dare. Mr. Tai's face froze, and his eyes gradually narrowed into slits. Anyone who is familiar with Mr. Tai knows that this is already a precursor to his anger. But Ame continued, rules are rules, even you can't circumvent them. Based on the principle of equivalent exchange, the space will give him corresponding compensation if you put him in great danger. In the end, you are not when you're fighting him, you're fighting space. Having said this, Aime's lips sneered, I have lived for so many years, but I have never seen anyone who can defeat space. Do you know why? Why? Mr. Tai's expression gradually slowed down. But Aime played it safe, I bet you lose. If you lose, I will tell you. If you win, I will serve you for another 300 years. What if I lose? Let her live and I will continue to serve you for 300 years. The girl Aime talks about does not refer to herself, but to Thalia who enters the world of this script. A good deal? I bet. Mr. Tai finally put a smile on his face and cast admiring glances at Aime. Although he disliked his subordinates who disobeyed him in this way, he had to say that she was a qualified negotiator. Even if Mr. Tai knew in his heart that after making such a bet, he wanted to maintain the fairness of the bet and could no longer directly intervene to influence the direction of the script world. Aime seemed to be pleading for her sister, putting herself in a position where she was bound to lose, making herself an offer that she couldn't refuse, and using the bet to tie her hands and feet. Smart negotiation is exactly that. What? Wouldn't it be a big loss for her to do this? You can't bear to let your children trap the wolf, and you are in a lower position. No matter you win or lose, your position is there. It takes 300 years to gain the qualifications for a game. This is a basic operation. But even if he no longer intervenes, he still doesn't believe that this young boy can come out of the script world alive. So he boldly accepted this contract, and whether he lost or won, he would always make a profit. Even if it is the worst outcome, there is still a guarantee of 300 years. Hey, I knew I was being tricked, but why did I suddenly fall in love with this feeling? Mr. Tai drank the coffee at hand and sighed in his heart. But, will I really lose? With doubts, Mr. Tai looked at the crystal ball. Rumble, rumble. Countless broken stones, with the blessing of shock waves, burst out with terrifying power comparable to cannonballs. The surrounding ground was instantly shaken to the ground. And when the dust cleared, to Matthew's surprise, a huge black turtle shell appeared on the ground. The turtle shell is covered with peculiar textures, layer after layer forming a towering turtle tower. The turtle holding the pagoda is a natural treasure. A strange divine glow can be vaguely seen surrounding the tortoise shell. As for Su Tong and Zhao San, they were standing and sitting in the turtle tower. Apart from being a little disgraced, they were basically uninjured. Seeing this, Matthew became even more angry and focused his eyes on the turtle tower. Suddenly, countless black hands appeared on the ground, trying to pull the turtle to the ground first. However, before these black hands could touch the turtle tower, they were shattered by an auspicious light. Zhao San formed a seal with his hands and sat cross-legged with one leg, and his body was filled with auspicious light. Su Tong took a closer look and saw that a bodhisattva appeared behind the sky. Luck also rose to the extreme for a while. This is Zhao San's way of saving his life. Although it is a bit rogue, it has to be said that combined with that weird time bomb, most people can only run away as soon as possible when they encounter him. Su Tong couldn't help but secretly speculate, what would he do if he encountered an opponent like Zhao San? Hard-hitting. Countless bone spears were seen falling like a rainstorm, but they hit the turtle's back without leaving even a trace. I'm afraid that a strong attack will be in vain. Matthew's furious fist smashed down, which only caused the turtle shell to tremble slightly. Instead, the force of the backlash from the turtle shell caused Matthew's fist to crack open, and at the same time, the value above his head also increased. Beating rapidly. It seems the only option is to run. Su Tong was thinking about his chances of escaping in this situation, but then he thought about that damn black rooster again. It seems that with his own speed, even trying to escape is a luxury. Even in the process of escaping, Zhao San would chase him along the way and shoot him coldly. It's really tricky. Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but hold up his chin. It seemed that he would really have no choice but to go to his master's house and hang up his war-free card. Did he? At this time, accompanied by a harsh explosion, the value of the cartoon cat floating above Matthew's head finally reached 1,000. The cartoon cat's body directly expanded in a circle, and then strange black holes exploded on Matthew's body. Light. Ah! A painful roar came from Matthew's mouth, and his tall body gradually shrank. Su Tong's eyes lit up when he saw this. He jumped out of the tower, followed by the mountain buckle, and smashed it down on Matthew. Kill you while you are sick. The abyss opened, and Beishinko fit together perfectly in this world. The surrounding ruins and buildings were all sunk into the abyss, seeming to become part of the abyss. Kakaka. The ancient door slowly opened, and a dim air of death surged out. The pupils on Matthew's head tightened, and a strong sense of crisis came over him, filling his heart with fear. He screamed and stretched out countless bone spurs to pierce the surroundings. At this time, I saw a solitary boat floating out from the gate. There was an old man sitting on the solitary boat, wearing a straw hat and holding a bamboo pole in his hand. He looked up and looked at Matthew, who was still struggling, and couldn't help but look at him. He smiled and said, "I fished for a long time before I got something like this." After saying that, he raised the fishing rod in his hand and swept the floor lightly into the door. For a moment, Matthew felt that his body was being lifted up by an uncontrollable force, and he was immediately thrown towards the door. No. Seeing the door getting closer and closer, Matthew moved his palms and smashed his huge fist at the old fishing man. Unexpectedly, the old man shook the fishing rod with his backhand, and actually withstood Matthew's fist, followed by another pump. Snapped. A mark from a bamboo pole appeared on Matthew's face, which instantly caused the eyeballs on Matthew's head to explode, and he fainted on the spot. "Boy, don't deal with this red-haired monster next time. This thing won't fetch a good price down there." Su Tong glared, "Why is it you? If I had known it was a veteran, I would have thrown this guy in with a mountain buckle." The old Taoist yawned, "Your master just left. He said he was going to Luofu Mountain to report on his duties. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to suppress that little girl, so he took him away together and asked me to stay here to guard him." After the old Taoist finished speaking, he glanced at Zhao Sanqian. Suddenly, Zhao San felt a chill in his heart, and he felt like his whole body was being seen through the turtle tower. He quickly smiled at the old Taoist, then pointed at Su Tong, "Friend. He, it's interesting, it's really interesting. I've heard that since Emperor Jiaozong of the Tang dynasty, he had a close relationship with Yanzhen's lineage, and they both died in the Tang dynasty. I didn't expect anyone else to do it. It's rare." After hearing what the old man said, Zhao San's expression gradually became serious. He had also heard his master talk about this matter. Praying and being tired of winning are mortal enemies. Praying for Taoism uses human internal organs to manifest supernatural powers, but the art of defeating victory uses strange spells to suppress things and harm people's lives. The two families were originally well water but not river water. During the reign of Emperor Jiaozong of the Tang dynasty, a major case that caused a sensation in both the government and the public occurred, involving the Weishengdo Shu. Someone in the palace invited people from Zuyu's family to use the magical powers of the 5 internal organs and the Weishengdo Shu to capture the person who set up the Weishengdo Shu. The case was so implicated that Emperor Jiaozong issued an order to kill the world's Yishan lineage. From then on, the Yansheng lineage became the mortal enemy of the Qi Dao lineage. The two families fought overtly and covertly, often to the death. In the end, until the demise of the Tang dynasty, both families were completely killed and injured, disappearing into the long river of history along with this most glorious empire. Even if there are occasional rumors, they are just superficial techniques. After a long time, many people have never even heard of the name. This system of my own, combined with my own spells and the blessing of prop cards, has long since undergone many changes from the original prayer technique. But he didn't want to be seen through by the old man at a glance, and he could even tell about the past, which made Zhao San feel wary. "Who are you, sir, and how do you know these secrets?" "I'll tell you if you come in." Zhao Sanyi looked at Su Tong, then immediately shook his head and said, "Forget it, senior, go on your way." After saying that, he turned around and ran away without looking back. "Hey!" Seeing this, the old Taoist couldn't help but shook his head regretfully. "It's a pity." Su Tong didn't know what the old man's idea was, but he was sure that this old ghost would not have any good intentions. "Let's go, let's go." The old Taoist waved his hand, dropped the bamboo pole again, and disappeared through the gate. After Su Tong dispersed and paid homage to Shankao, the space in front of him became blurry. It seemed that after Matthew was captured, the power maintaining the space around him began to collapse. As he watched more and more smoke in front of him gradually become thicker and thicker, the outline of reality emerged in the haze. "Careful!" Suddenly, Amarda's warning sound came, and Su Tong instinctively ducked back. His body was wrapped in thick clouds and smoke, and he only saw a pale palm sticking out from the darkness in front of him. The palm was covered with strange eyeballs, staring closely at Su Tong's chest. There was only a slight distance between them, and there were two worlds. Su Tong felt his body sink and he fell heavily on the wooden board. When he looked again, he was already back in the cellar, surrounded by thick smoke and dust. Matthew's body had been burned into a torch by the flames, and the surrounding area was also set on fire. "Cough cough cough, let's go." "Get out first." Zhao San took Su Tong's arm, and the two ran out of the cellar one after the other. The flames were getting bigger and bigger, and when the two of them walked out, the flames were already coming out from under the ground. You can see some tiny bones exposed from time to time in the cracked earth. "Bah, bad luck." Zhao San cursed secretly, then looked at Su Tong, hesitated for a moment and then said, "That old man just now. Leave him alone, his defeated generals are not worth mentioning." After listening to Su Tong's words, Zhao San looked like he believed you, but seeing Su Tong's attitude, he stopped asking questions. "I'm going back first. Let's talk again at the church in the evening." Saying this, Zhao San waved his hand, turned around and left. "Put out the fire, put out the fire." At this time, the flames were getting bigger and bigger, and someone had already called the fire alarm. Not long after, a clanking sound was heard, indicating that the nearby fire brigade had arrived. Although they were in a different era, these people holding simple firefighting tools still rushed towards the sea of fire as always. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 544. Back home. Shar has returned with Josie. After briefly asking Sal about Josie's condition, Sal said it was just a simple fever. The doctor bled Miss Josie and applied ice, and the high fever subsided. It's just that Miss Jiaoqian is still very weak now, so she went to bed early after coming back. Su Tong nodded and did not comment on the so-called bloodletting therapy. He took a bath and planned to have a good rest after lunch and then go to church in the evening. As a result, just after taking a shower, news came out in the team channel. It was the news from Unto that tonight's party was cancelled. Andre was still awake and he needed to go to the hospital with Archbishop Evelyn. Mrs. Enman has found clues to the third invitation letter and has already roped in Demu to look for it. If nothing else, she will find it tonight. Sure enough, it is good to have a team, and the efficiency is much faster than working alone. Since there was no need for a party, Su Tong simply ate and drank enough to get back into bed and have a good sleep. As soon as I fell asleep, I heard a noise outside the door. Su Tong didn't open his eyelids, but he knew it was Qiao Qian just by hearing the voice. Oh, and the dog. Sure enough, the quilt was lifted, and a cold hand was placed on Su Tong's chest. After a while, a slight snore came from his arms. In fact, Su Tong slept particularly soundly this night and woke up twice in the middle of the night. Once, he noticed someone outside the door. It was Shar, but the old housekeeper seemed to know that he was sleeping, so he didn't disturb him. Another time, the maid was cleaning. When she walked outside the door, she accidentally fell and went downstairs cursing. It wasn't until late at night that Su Tong opened his eyelids. When he looked, he saw Josie curled up in his arms, her eyelids blinking as if she had already woken up. Sensing Su Tong's gaze, Qiao Qian raised her head, her face suddenly flushed, and she didn't look sick at all. It's more comfortable to sleep in your arms. Then why don't you go back to sleep? Because I can't sleep. It was true that they couldn't sleep. The two of them had slept all day, but they were full of energy at the moment. Do you still want to listen to the story? Su Tong asked after a moment of silence. Sun Wukong and the Seven Fairies. No, let's use something else this time. Early in the morning, Mrs. Morgan looked at Josie in surprise, put away her makeup, and sat in the dining room to have breakfast. In my impression, Josie rarely got up so early. She seemed to be recovering from a serious illness, and Josie's appetite was also very good. She didn't look like a patient who had just been sick at all. However, thinking of what the maids at home had been whispering about recently, Mrs. Morgan felt that she still needed to remind her daughter. Sitting next to Josie, Mrs. Morgan organized her thoughts and coughed twice. Josie, I went to see you last night and you didn't sleep in your room. Josie put down the spoon in her hand, looked at Mrs. Moses, then nodded and said, yes, I had a nightmare, so I slept in Kevin's room, and he told me stories. Mrs. Morgan was a little surprised when she heard this. She didn't expect Josie to respond so simply. But seeing Josie's pure and bright eyes, Mrs. Morgan couldn't help but wonder if she was overthinking it. So he asked tentatively, is it just about telling stories? Yes, every time I lie in his arms and listen to the thumping heartbeat in his chest, I sleep very comfortably and feel safe. Kevin never wakes me up, even if I put his arm I'm all numb. Josie answered innocently. Her pure and innocent gaze made Mrs. Morgan's face feel a little hot for a moment, and she even felt ashamed. How could I bring such dirty thoughts into two pure children? As if to hide her inner guilt, Mrs. Morgan picked up the spoon and took a sip of the cream of mushroom soup. So what story would Kevin tell you? The fragrant milk soup is mixed with the aroma of oats and mushrooms. It has a thick and delicate texture. It is the best breakfast for beauty. As she was holding a mouthful of soup in her mouth, before she could swallow it, she heard Qiao thoughtfully say. Last night he told a new story called, Calculus, Calculus. Josie didn't remember the name of the story, so she simply said, oh, it's a story about 7 men and a married woman, and in the end, the woman's husband was killed. Puff. In the next 2 days, Amontes seemed to have regained his composure. Master Morgan became busy again. I don't know if it's because of the blessing of Bishop Kevin, an angel, that several families in Amontes have started selling off their properties like crazy. There are many industries among them that Mr. Morgan wants to be involved in, but has always been excluded. But now they are all packaged and sold. The people from these families seem to want to take action as soon as possible and then leave here. Mrs. Morgan's Tea Party circle has completely changed in just 2 days. Many of the original ladies have disappeared without a trace. Even the small club where the tea party was originally held had to be transferred. There are many reasons for this, but only a few people know what is going on. In the final analysis, it was not because Amonte's underground industry was destroyed. In just 2 days, all the local gangs were cleared by the police station, and several officials who were implicated were arrested and imprisoned immediately. All the families involved in the case were not spared and were cleared out of Amontes. The only option is to sell off the property as soon as possible, take the money and run away. In the final analysis, it was still because of the anger of the church, which believed that the death of Archbishop Alatia was related to the cults that these idiots worshipped. Leaving aside these problems, Mr. Morgan really made a big mistake this time. In one fell swoop, he bought 2 factories and a shipyard, doubling his net worth, and even repurchased a luxurious manor in the best geographical location of Amontes. I have been busy these days buying new furniture for my home, planning to move in before winter. And for all this, Mr. Morgan always attributed it to the wealth that Kevin, the angel, brought to him. Su Tong didn't know whether it was Su Tong who brought him wealth. Because he does have wealth luck, and the wealth luck and Mr. Morgan's aura complement each other, so it is difficult to say clearly whether he brings wealth luck to Mr. Morgan, or whether Mr. Morgan's own wealth luck is shared with him. It's really hard to explain luck clearly. Su Tong felt more and more that he really needed to read all the books Master mentioned. In the afternoon, Su Tong came to the hospital in a carriage. After all, as an archbishop, Andre, as an honorary bishop, always has to visit. Josie also came over and brought many gifts to Andre. Perhaps because of Andre's special status, the entire hospital was very nervous. There were many more security personnel than usual, including people from the Inquisition. Miss Josie, long time no see. Evelyn stood outside the hospital door, seemingly waiting here after getting the news. Seeing Josie stepping out of the car, Evelyn had a kind and bright smile on her face. Coupled with the bright bishop's robe, she looked like a kind Santa Claus in the sunshine. May the Lord God be with you. Josie rolled up her skirt and bowed to the archbishop in front of her. Evelyn nodded with satisfaction and looked at Su Tong. May the Lord God be with you. This time it was Su Tong's turn to take the initiative to say hello. After all, he now had a specific position. Even if he was an honorary bishop, he was still under the authority of the Pope and the Archbishop. My child, you are too polite. Evelyn looked at Su Tong as if she were seeing her own grandson, and affectionately took Su Tong's hand and walked forward. The church already knows what happened last time. The appearance of the miracle made those who originally had doubts about Su Tong shut their mouths. After all, the power of faith belongs to the Lord of God. If one can control the power of faith, then one is undoubtedly the spokesperson of the Lord of God. If the Pope were not already old and his identity was too sensitive, he would have come to Amontes in person to take him back to the Vatican. The Pope's envoy is coming soon. If nothing unexpected happens, you will go to the Vatican with the envoy this winter to receive the Pope's baptism. Ah! After Evelyn finished speaking, Xiao 11, who was following Su Tong, was suddenly stunned. Evelyn looked back at Xiao Qian, and seeing Xiao Qian staring at Su Tong, she couldn't help but said with a little regret, "This is inevitable." Su Tong also noticed Xiao 11's gaze, stretched out his hand to hold her restless little hand, and said to Evelyn, "But I should have the right to refuse." As he spoke, he specifically raised Josie's little hand and waved it in front of Evelyn's face. This move is simply a blasphemy against the church. Clergy are not allowed to touch women. This is an iron law of the church. But Evelyn seemed to have not seen it, ignoring Su Tong's little movement and said, "I don't know this, but the church has indeed not shown a miracle for a long, long time. In the past, the church might have been able to do some small tricks to fake miracles, such as having an archbishop play the role of an angel and use the power of the holy light to perform miracles in front of the world. But how can the power of mortals be compared with the power of real gods? Even if it happens once in a while, once it is discovered or even exposed by other churches, it will cause huge harm to the reputation of the church. Especially as the empire grows stronger, the current king of the empire has begun to tighten the purse strings of the church and even secretly supports other sects. Therefore, in recent years, the church has no longer dared to engage in these small tricks at will. In a nutshell, the church's influence is declining, as can be seen in the number of abortion doctors. Therefore, a living and walking miracle is exactly what the church needs most. Evelyn did not answer Su Tong directly, but her words also hinted that he had the capital to negotiate terms with the church. While the two were talking, they had already arrived in front of the ward. Strictly speaking, they came to the corridor of the ward, because the church had taken over this floor, and both the nurses and doctors were only serving Andre. Evelyn signaled Su Tong to go in alone, while he and GameElements waited for him outside. Su Tong nodded and walked into the corridor. Seeing his figure entering the ward, Evelyn turned around with a smile and looked at Josie again. Then let's talk too. Evelyn took out a bunch of silver crosses from her sleeves, and the smile on her face gradually faded. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 545. Andre's injuries were not serious. But Hecate's corrosive power has polluted his soul and is gradually eroding his vitality. Whether it is Evelyn or Untu, they have tried many methods, but they have not been able to remove Hecate's power. Expulsion. This corrosive force has the power of Hecate's godhead, which is the true power of the gods. Unless the Pope unites with the 12 archbishops to bless him, it is absolutely impossible to cure it. Not to mention that his current body can no longer withstand the fatigue of any windmill. Even if he reaches the Vatican, can the Church still gather 12 archbishops? Do you really think that the archbishop is like a cabbage in the field, and you can make up for it by just picking one? I sensed someone entering the door. Andre slowly opened his eyes on the hospital bed. When he saw clearly who was walking to his bed, he felt no joy at all, but an indescribable feeling of disgust. Simply closing his eyelids, "You know I don't like you. It's normal for men not to like men. Besides, there's an age difference between us." Su Tong sat by the bed, smiling, as if he wasn't angry at all. He picked up an apple, wiped it a few times, then put it in his mouth and started chewing it. Andre was startled. Isn't that what he meant by his liking? Looking at Su Tong's cynical expression again, he suddenly felt even more bored. He frowned and said, "You stole the fruit of the God Lord, you thief." "That's borrowing." Su Tong spread his hands helplessly, resolutely rejecting such accusations. "It's all the same. You don't believe in the Lord at all. Don't deny it in a hurry. I have never seen humility towards the Lord in your eyes, not even a little bit." This sentence was somewhat beyond Su Tong's expectations. But he didn't refute Andre, because what Andre said was true. It was indeed difficult for him to have any respectful thoughts towards the God Lord whom he had never met before. "Not only because I am not a native of this world, but more importantly, I have no so-called reverence for gods in my bones." Seeing that Su Tong didn't speak, Andre continued, "But why is it you?" Andre looked at Su Tong's heart out of the corner of his eye, the devil's heart and the angel's soul. The combination of the two contradictions was a miracle in itself. I have to say, he was jealous. Even a devout believer like himself has never received this honor. Even after death and his soul returns to heaven, he is ultimately just a servant of God, not the deity itself. In contrast, because of the recognition of Archangel Michael, Su Tong can sit on the same level as himself in heaven, or even be of a higher level than himself. How can this make Andre feel balanced? "I'm actually passive," Su Tong added in a low voice. These words hurt deeply, and Andrei felt the pain in his heart. He said angrily, get out now before I can't help but kill you." This time Su Tong stood up and left obediently. He could clearly sense the murderous aura that Andrei was suppressing in his heart at this moment. It was obvious that the Archbishop was really murderous towards him. Just when Su Tong walked to the door, Andrei suddenly said, "Leave Amontes as soon as possible, you are not safe here." When Su Tong heard this, he pretended not to hear it, opened the door and walked out. Until Su Tong left, Andrei slowly opened his eyelids and saw his hand popping out from the quilt, holding a dagger inlaid with gems. Looking at the dagger, Andrei couldn't help but he sighed, his eyes filled with worry. Don't mind the child. That's Andrei's temperament, but he always yearns for light in his heart. When Evelyn saw Su Tong walking out so quickly, she couldn't help but stop her discussion with Xiao Qian, and instead opened her mouth to comfort her with a smile. He, it's just something I expected." Su Tong did not deny this. He came here just as a formality. After all, he and Andrei couldn't get along from the beginning. There was no deep hatred between them, but it was really difficult for them to sit together and talk and laugh. As he spoke, he looked at Josie and saw that Josie didn't look too good. Evelyn also noticed this and sighed, "Child, no matter what, your destiny is always in your own hands. No matter what the final result is, I will support you together without reservation." Hearing this, GameElements' expression gradually improved and she nodded heavily towards Evelyn before walking to Su Tong's side. "Then let's take our leave. If the Pope's messenger comes, you can ask him to come to Morgan's house to find me, or inform me in advance and I will go to the church to see him. Ha ha ha, it's not that troublesome. As far as I know, this envoy is quite casual. He may have come to the door on his own in the past few days." Evelyn smiled and sent the two of them out of the hospital. When she saw Su Tong getting on the carriage, she suddenly remembered something. "Oh, by the way, Antu has to investigate some things recently. You have to go to the Inquisition every now and then. Go there, otherwise I'm worried there will be trouble." "Okay." Su Tong readily agreed. Then Gandalf waved his riding whip, and the carriage slowly headed towards the city center. Next, of course, comes the exciting purchasing process. These two golden boys and girls walking on the street were already extremely eye-catching, not to mention that Su Tong really didn't feel bad at all when he spent money. All kinds of gems, buy all kinds. Coupled with Kevin's handsome face and the contrast with Miss Josie next to him, it is simply that he is young, rich, and has a beautiful woman in his arms. It is difficult not to attract people's attention. Big and small bags were almost filling Gandalf's carriage. But the two of them had no intention of going back, and Josie asked Gandalf if there was anything interesting. Gandalf scratched his head. Obviously, for him, the so-called fun places were those dark alleys, and the Roma girls in them were the most fun. It's just that, facing a pure angel like Miss Josie, even Gandalf couldn't say it. "Oh. Yes, today is a special day. There is a bullfight. It will be very exciting. You can go and see it." Gandalf suddenly remembered something and suggested to Su Tong. "Bullfighting." Su Tong seemed to have some impression of this matter. He remembered that the last time Gandalf took him to eat roasted pork chops, the boss mentioned it in the gambling report. GameElements had never been to that kind of place. As soon as she heard about such a place, she looked at Su Tong with pleading eyes. "Then go and have a look." Su Tong smiled and nodded, saying that he could go and see what the so-called bullfighting would be like. When Gandalf heard this, he immediately waved his whip and changed the direction, making the carriage go towards a small road. There is no real bull ring in Amontes, and the bullfights are only held in a relatively small manner. When they rushed over, the outside was already crowded with people. Those who cannot buy tickets can only stay outside and wait for the results inside. Most of these people are gamblers. They don't care about the process and only hope to get the results they want. Gandalf talked for a long time at the ticket window, but it turned out that there were no tickets. Of course, if you want, you can pay to go in, but you can only watch in the narrow corridor with the farmers. Gandalf knew very well what those stinky farmers were, and throwing the golden couple, Master Kevin and Miss Josie, into them would have been like snow white paper thrown into the stinking ditch. So Gandalf could only rush back with an apology. After hearing Gandalf's words, Josie couldn't help but sigh with disappointment, then go back. No, wait a moment. Su Tong took her little hand and signaled to wait. Not long after, a thin figure emerged from the crowd and waved towards Su Tong. Come on, follow me. The speaker was thin, wearing grey clothes, and had a pair of naughty little eyes. He was none other than Damu. It turns out that when we joined the team, everyone introduced each other's identities in the script world. Damu worked in the bull ring. After learning that there were no tickets, Su Tong called out to Damu in the team. For such small things, Damu is naturally very happy to help, but of course not for free. After taking a check handed over by Su Tong, Damu folded the check in his hand and threw it into the prop book. He also took out a bag of coins and threw it to another person behind him. After the other party weighed the weight a few times, he opened the side door and let them in. Amakun, you and Mrs. Anman didn't have any difficulty getting the invitation letter last time. As everyone walked and chatted, Su Tong lowered his voice and mentioned this matter. Damu sighed and said helplessly. We got the invitation, but the other person had already committed suicide. He was a magician, and it was said that he was also a famous fortune teller. But when we found him, he had been dead for a while, and his body had turned smelly. Because Su Tong and Zhao San learned from the past, Mrs. Anman and Zhao San were fully prepared for this operation. As a result, when they looked for it, they discovered that the magician had locked himself in a prop box. The strange thing was that the box was locked from the inside. The magician held the key in his hand, which meant that he had suffocated himself inside. Are there no other clues? Su Tong frowned and asked. Damu thought for a while and whispered to Su Tong what he knew about the situation. I don't know if this is a clue, but his prop room was rummaged around like a thief. After counting, his family found that the cash and gold and silver jewelry were all well preserved. The thief did not steal these valuable things at all. The only thing missing was a set of tarot cards designed by the magician. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 546. In short, Amu and Mrs. Anman only found the third invitation letter, but no other clues, which also made them very annoyed. While talking, Damu had already brought Su Tong and Xiao Qian to a small private room. This box was originally reserved for someone else, but through the operation of an acquaintance, Damu vacated the box. From here, you can enjoy the entire bull ring process from a high position. The matador, wearing a bright costume, gracefully walked into the arena, took off his hat, saluted the surrounding audience, and received a round of applause. After Su Tong took a look at the matador's luck, he smiled and said to Xiao Qian, would you like to take a gamble? Bet. Josie's eyes widened. It was obvious that she had never done such an exciting thing before. In my impression, Mr. Morgan resolutely resisted any gambling behavior. In his words, only fools would do such things. Would you like to bet? It's not too late to place your bet now. Damu couldn't help but encourage him. Gambling was definitely the fastest way for any player to get rich. It was efficient and relatively safe. Damu has always wanted to gamble, but with the capital in hand, he was not even qualified to enter the game. As for going to those small casinos, it's even more boring. You can only win a few dollars if you win. After Su Tong took out a check and wrote down the amount, he handed it to Damu and I pressed the cow. Ox. Damu took a look at the field and saw that none of the bulls were on the field. Moreover, as far as he knew, in order to ensure a lively atmosphere for everyone in the bull ring, the bulls in the first game were often not very strong. Yes, just beat the bull to win. After facing Su Tong's confirmation, Mu hesitated for a while, but turned around and quickly placed his bet. Anyway, if someone has money, losing will have nothing to do with him. Are you so sure the cow will win? Josie asked quietly. Su Tong smiled mysteriously and whispered, "No, I am sure that I will win. I don't know why, but soon after I walked out of the hospital, my luck began to rise. The chi above my head had already formed a ladder-like cloud layer, which was a sign that I was rising step by step. As for the reason, he didn't know, but it was always a good thing. The stronger the luck, the better his luck. So he also wanted to give it a try and see if he could win." After a while, Damu handed the bill to Su Tong. He also muttered, £50,000 is enough for me to spend for a long time. At this time, the bullpen was opened, and a black cow was released from it. When Damu saw the black cow, he was instantly stunned. "Isn't this the cow in the finale? Asshole, what are those idiots down there doing?" Damu cursed and greeted the whole family of those damn stall officials. "This black bull is a purebred bullfighting sent from Spain. It is the finale of this time. How can it be sent to the first show? Look, there's no suspense anymore. I'll go down and take a look." Damu felt something was wrong and planned to go down to see the situation. Seeing this, Xiao Qian looked at Su Tong's face with surprise and admiration written all over it. Sure enough, just as Damu said, there was no suspense in the battle. The matador, who had been so elegant and unrestrained just now, started beating in his heart when he saw this black bull. When the black cow walked out of the wooden barrier, the sun shone under the black cow's shiny fur. Even those sitting in the audience could clearly feel the pressure emanating from the cow. The bullfighter's legs were weak on the spot. He waited for the black bull to rush over, threw the red cloth in his hand, and ran away, causing a burst of curses in the audience. A shirtless man jumped onto the railing, tore off his clothes and cursed, "Refund your money." It is impossible to refund money. But the lost money still had to be paid. By the time Damu came back, the £50,000 that Su Tong had suppressed had turned into £150,000. The cows in the cowshed didn't know what they ate. They all got sick, except for this one cow. Damu handed the money to Su Tong with a depressed face, and he was back before liberation. It seems that he was unlucky. Originally, the big boss of the bull ring wanted to train new people, and the first bull he appointed was a castrated bull. As a result, when they were almost on the stage, the cow suddenly disappeared. Not to mention entering the venue, even standing up was difficult. They could only temporarily change the cows into the factory, but when they turned around and saw, my boss had given the cows laxatives, and they all turned into splatoons. The only one that was intact was the big black cow. It seems that because of the problem of forage, this big black cow imported from Spain ate differently from other cows and survived. There was no choice but to pull the cow out. This is how the scene just happened. In addition, the genius Su Tong won £150,000, which is enough to make the cattle farm owner cry with distress, not to mention such a big mess below. It is estimated that even if the big boss behind it is not bankrupt, he will not be able to get over it. Su Tong handed a check to Damu. It could be seen that this guy had a depressed look on his face. He had obviously paid off all the bounty Andre had given him last time. "Thanks." Damu put the money into his pocket, with a look of depression on his face. Because the bulls were already sick and could not continue fighting one after another, the bull ring simply sent all the matadors down to perform a group fight. This move undoubtedly calmed the grievances of everyone present. After all, the big black bull still looked quite powerful. At one point, 8 matadors came down from the stage and took turns attacking the black bull with spears and swords. The bloody scene naturally made many people scream excitedly. Especially after watching Black Bull fall to the ground exhausted under the siege, it even attracted cheers from the audience. "Sorry, I'm going to the bathroom." Josie obviously looked unaccustomed to such a bloody scene, and stood up and walked out of the door. "Hey, this cow must taste really good." Damu didn't take this seriously, but looked forward to the delicious taste of beef. "Oh, by the way, Lee Jun, there is one thing I have to remind you." At this time, Damu suddenly remembered something, and looked at Su Tong with an increasingly serious expression. "Do you have any grudge against the people from the Shadow Team?" "Shadow Team?" Su Tong was stunned for a moment, with a bit of confusion in his eyes, but he did not remember to deny it, and just gave a specious answer. "Is there any problem?" "Well, the Shadow Team has a big background. Although after this script, you will become a certified player, and the Shadow Team is by no means your opponent. But their backstage is very big. It's the 12 Stars, a team of 12 certified players. So if possible, you can ask your boss to help you negotiate a peace and let them withdraw the wanted order against you." Damu talked a lot, but Su Tong became more and more confused as he listened. But then he thought about it and realized that the person Damu was talking about might not be him, but that fat guy Li Bo. Speaking of this damn fat man, Su Tong couldn't help but smile knowingly. He suddenly missed this guy and didn't know how this guy was doing recently. Seeing that Su Tong didn't speak, Damu stopped talking. He said so much not just because Su Tong gave him too much money. It's because Su Tong's performance exceeded expectations that even Zhao San, a nasty guy, gave him a high evaluation. Damu remembered what Zhao San said last night when they had dinner. "If you're not sure that you'll kill him with one hit, don't fight this guy." Such comments are extremely rare to come from the mouth of Zhao San, a master tactician. I believe that if there are no accidents, after the script world ends this time, the captain will win him over and officially join the team. Therefore, it is still necessary to establish a good relationship in advance. In the bathroom, Josie approached the door, locked the toilet door, and opened the toilet partition doors one by one. After making sure there was no one in the toilet, she took out a business card holder from the satchel on her waist. The business card holder slowly opened, and a black tarot card appeared between Josie's fingers, with a devil with a head and a body painted on it. Holding a knife and fork, eating at the dining table. "You are the one." Josie raised her head and looked at the figure in the mirror in front of her. Along with the black magic circle rising under her feet, a bull-headed monster in the mirror quietly turned into a black mist and circled around Josie. After the circle, he got into the ceiling. The bullfight ended hastily, leaving many people dissatisfied. Although many people had learned the inside information and knew that the cows in the cattle farm were sick and it was unlikely that there would be another bullfight in the short term, they still shouted to let them go. The boss moved out another cow. Su Tong and Xiao Qian left early and went home. At night, Josie returned home in a carriage and was called into the room by Mrs. Morgan. It seemed like he was planning to sleep with Josie. Su Tong also said that he was happy to hear this. At least he didn't have to worry about Xiao Qian coming to tell him stories at night, and he didn't have to hear the stupid dog snoring. But just after returning to the room, Su Tong paused. "I just heard a subtle call coming from my ears." The voice was very familiar. It was Master Song's voice, and it seemed to be calling him to come in. Only then did he remember that the master should be back. Thinking of this, he released Dia and Fasai and asked them to guard outside the room door, then locked the doors and windows to make sure there was no problem. He raised his hand slightly, and then a small crack opened in front of his eyes. With a quick step, Su Tong disappeared into the abyss behind the crack. In the bull ring on the other side, a feast is also going on at the moment. The candlelight flickered in front of the tent. In the huge bull ring, a bonfire was set up at this moment. Although the weather is very cold today, Franklin, the big boss of the bullring, still insists on dining here. It seems that only in this way can we feel the passion of bullfighting immersively. The butler on the side reported today's losses, which made Franklin feel heartbroken and bleeding. 28 bullfighting bulls suffered from collective diarrhea, and 3 of them were completely dead. The remaining condition is not very good. According to the veterinarian, it is almost impossible to survive tomorrow. Including the losses in the casino, he lost nearly £300,000 that day, which was almost half of his net worth. When he saw the bill, Franklin's mentality exploded. £150,000 of it was actually won by someone. Find out who won the money, and I'm going to throw him into the copper bowl. Seeing such a big bet, Franklin had already concluded that this man was responsible for his cow's sudden diarrhea. If so, I would definitely let him experience the taste of a copper bowl. The so-called copper bowl is Franklin's special beef roasting stove. It is said that it was specially created to imitate the torture of a certain era. The stove made of brass can be divided into 2 parts from the middle. After being locked, no gap will be left. The copper bowl looks much larger than an ordinary bullfight. After the beef is rubbed with spices, it is roasted inside with the skin. After the roast is completed, the beef will maintain a complete standing posture. When the stove was turned on, a steaming bowl stood in front of him. Franklin liked this feeling best. It made him feel as if he had become a matador. The black bowl that caused him to lose money today has been wiped clean. Under Franklin's comments, it was put into the copper bowl. The chef on the side also specially brushed the black beef with a thick layer of fat and spices to ensure that the barbecue would be more flavorful. But no one noticed that the moment the chef closed the copper bowl, a black shadow quietly got into the copper bowl. "Master, I found it out, can you take a look?" At this time, the butler walked to Franklin and asked Franklin to come into the counting room. Then he took out today's betting bill, flipped through the pages, pointed to one of the records and said, "Look, the person who placed the bet used a check from the Morgan family." The Morgans. Franklin frowned for a moment. Of course he knew about the Morgan family. Now there was no one in the entire Amontes who didn't know about the Morgan family. That old guy Morgan was really lucky. During this period, he made crazy acquisitions of those factories. It's hard to overstate how much money he made every day. More importantly, the mysterious Earl Kevin of the Morgan family. According to many gossips, Earl Kevin has a deep relationship with the church. Although they are all rumors, the Morgan family has indeed jumped into the Anman Empire by relying on the relationship of Earl Kevin. In Tez's upper-class circle. This makes Franklin a little unpredictable. Is it just a coincidence? With the wealth of the Morgan family, how could they use such despicable methods to deal with themselves? What's more, a mere £150,000 is just a drop in the bucket for the Morgan family. Maybe someone else used the Morgan family's check. The steward speculated. Well, let's check again. If it's really from the Morgan family, forget it. Don't provoke the Morgan family. Franklin sighed. Just half a month ago, the Morgan family was just a watch repairman like himself. Even if he had some wealth, he still couldn't get rid of the shackles of his identity. But now, the Morgan family has become the richest family in Amontes, controlling 2/3 of the factories in Amontes. This is simply unimaginable. Does this guy really have a god protecting him? Thinking of this, Franklin was already thinking about whether he should donate some money to the church and see if the Almighty God could bless him. With that said, Franklin walked out of the accounting room and prepared to enjoy today's dinner. However, when he led the butler and others to the tent in the bullring, he found that there was a mess in front of him, and there were no traces of the chefs. Where are the people? Franklin was startled. Just when he was confused, the smell of barbecue filled the air. But it wasn't the beef smell he was familiar with. When he looked suspiciously at the copper bowl that was roasting in the bonfire, The housekeeper seemed to notice something. He slowly turned around and saw a blurry black figure in the darkness, walking towards them. Ah! The shrill screams immediately echoed in the huge bullring. It wasn't until the early morning of the next morning, when the workers of the bull farm re-entered the bull ring, that they saw the bones piled up on the table, and at the top of the table, Franklin's head was placed. "Sorry, I'm a little tired today. Let's update one chapter first. After I collect my thoughts, I will add another chapter tomorrow." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 547. Buzz, Kakaka. Stepping into the gate, the black water in front of you is like a vast ocean. Something is rising and falling on the water from time to time. If you look closely, it is all skeletons and corpses. A withered old tree stood on the water, with no leaves or flowers, and only 2 fruits. That is the Dao fruit of the eldest princess. It's just that at this moment, the Dao fruit is actually connected to this dead tree. If you didn't know better, you would have thought that these 2 fruits grew from the tree. You came. Under the withered tree, the eldest princess sat cross-legged, holding the lotus seal with her hands. She opened her eyes, and white bones and skulls were reflected in her eyes. Su Tong's heart skipped a beat, and he was so scared when the eldest princess looked at him. "It's been a while since I came here, but I feel like the princess's temperament has changed again. Instead of being as sharp as before, she has become more delicate, smart, gentle, and elegant. If I hadn't been bitten by this bitch and knew how powerful her mouth was, I would have thought she was a lady from a certain family." He took another look at the Dao fruit on the top of the princess's head. Yes, there were still 2 Dao fruits. He couldn't help but secretly thought, have these old ladies taken aphrodisiacs? How did their strength rise so fast? He had a strong premonition that this girl would soon bear 3 Tao fruits. She wouldn't be alive by then, right? Seeing the surprise in Su Tong's eyes, the eldest princess just smiled but would not explain the reason to him. In fact, the truth is not difficult. As long as you think about it for a while, you can understand it. She reversed the yin and yang and came to life from death. This was an act that went against heaven. To practice in the yang world, even if you are hiding in the palace, is to swim against the current. But in the underworld, it's completely different. It's just that she couldn't and didn't dare to easily set foot in the underworld in the past. If she was seen by the underworld, she would not be able to hide her affairs. When the time comes, the king of hell will make a single stroke and his hundreds of years of practice will disappear. But it's different now. Not only can she live openly and honestly in Su Tong's reality, but she also has a legal contract given to her by her master. With her identity changed and her treatment also changed, the path becomes wider. This time she and her master went to Luofu Mountain and got this precious tree by chance. This precious tree has a great connection with their Zhu family and was planted in an inconspicuous forest under Luofu Mountain. There have been countless ghosts in the past, but no one noticed this treasure tree. It is fitting that she has this opportunity. With the blessing of this treasure tree, even if she only has 2 Tao fruits, her strength is extraordinary. It is only a matter of time before she bears 3 Tao fruits. I think I used to feel very unhappy about this, but now, so delicious. Therefore, the look in Su Tong's eyes no longer held so much resentment. Of course, in Su Tong's eyes, this woman was just greedy for her own blood. Go in. The eldest princess moved her fingers, and the black water rolled in front of her eyes, and a stone bridge emerged. At this time, Su Tong remembered something and turned to the eldest princess and asked, "The guy you suppressed under the water was not killed by you, right? Are you talking about him?" The eldest princess pointed her finger and saw the black water split, revealing a water prison. Matthew, who had turned into a demon, was now curled up into a ball. He has returned to his original appearance, his eyes are blind, and his body is no longer as powerful as before, and he looks like a dying old man. Why did it become like this? Su Tong couldn't help frowning when he saw this, and asked the princess if she could let this guy speak. It's useless. After this guy realized that he couldn't escape, he forcefully pulled this thing out of his soul. As a result, his soul was cracked. Now he can't ask anything. If you don't come, he won't be able to hold on for long. The eldest princess took out a card from her sleeve and threw it to Su Tong. This is what was embedded in his soul, this is what turned him into this. Su Tong took the card and took a look. It was a tarot card. Tarot cards. Looking at the tarot cards in his hand, Su Tong couldn't help but think that Damu said that the owner of the third invitation was a magician. Could this be the tarot card he lost? After thinking for a moment, Su Tong threw the tarot card into the prop book. Dark Tarot, damaged. Special items. It is said that there are a total of 12 tarot cards, corresponding to the 12 demon kings of hell. Each tarot card can bring different bad luck. The item has been damaged beyond repair. Why? Su Tong sighed, thinking of arresting him and interrogating him as to where the fourth invitation was, but he didn't expect this guy to maim himself first. He could only signal the eldest princess to deal with it as she pleased, while she walked across the stone bridge to find the master. Crossing the stone bridge, I saw an old Taoist weaving bamboo baskets. I don't know where the old man got the bamboo from. The bamboo is so dark in color that it looks like it has been dyed black by ink. But don't mention it, the craftsmanship is quite good. The bamboo baskets we made are quite nice. Seeing Su Tong coming, the old Taoist took out a small bamboo lantern from a bamboo basket and gave it to him. Hey, it's a pity that you are old at this craft and don't promote traditional crafts. Su Tong took it in his hand and played with it. The bamboo lampstand had a lampshade and a wick inside. It's exquisite and small, but about the size of a baby's fist. Just for this craftsmanship, it can be sold for 10 yuan. Little one, as long as you like it. The old man grinned, next time you come back, bring me some snacks. The snacks here are too hard and not delicious. Okay, I remember it. Su Tong wrote down this incident and threw the bamboo lantern in his hand into the prop book. Huh. I saw that after the bamboo lantern was thrown into the prop book, it turned into a prop card. Ghost Bamboo Lantern. To the north of the underworld, there is a bamboo forest. The bamboos are pitch black and their roots are like bones. The souls of the deceased are sucked into the bamboos. Unless the ghost bamboos bloom, they cannot be reincarnated. The ghost bamboo is used as the vessel and the ghost flower is the core. There is something magical about it after it is lit. Active Skill 1, Ghost lights up. Spend 100 script points to light the ghost lantern. Once the soul suffers irreversible trauma or is attacked, the damage will be transferred to the ghost lantern. Note, after the ghost bamboo lantern is lit, it cannot be included in the prop book once it is damaged, it cannot be repaired. This thing quite surprised Su Tong. Unexpectedly, the thing that the veteran made up at random turned out to be a prop card, and it seemed to have a very good effect. How about, you give me a few more? The old Taoist pointed at Su Tong's head angrily. Humph, this thing is not difficult to make, and the materials are not difficult to find. There are plenty of them under Luofu Mountain, but the wick is gone. Wick. Su Tong glanced at the handful of grey wicks in the bamboo lantern and couldn't help but wonder, is this thing rare? It's not difficult. Deep in the ghost bamboo forest, there is often a ghost-faced flower. There are 2 flowers on one branch. The flower blooms with 2 sides, one yin and one yang. Instead of petals, just pick off the flower core and pinch it with your hands. But it's only because your master is protected by Yingguan that you dare to take the risk to pick this thing. Otherwise, even I would probably not be able to escape being put into the ghost bamboo and not allowed to be reincarnated. When Su Tong heard this, he realized that this thing was so dangerous. The master must have prepared it for himself when he took such a big risk. Thinking of this, Su Tong naturally felt warm in his heart. He nodded towards the old man and said that he would definitely bring him some snacks when he comes next time. Then he pushed the door open and entered the room. As soon as he entered the door, Master Su Tong had already prepared fragrant tea. After winking at him, Su Tong turned around and trotted into the master's courtyard. When I walked in, I saw that the master was wearing a black robe today. His hair had grown a lot longer and was casually draped over his shoulders. He was still sitting by the fish pond fishing. Seeing him coming, he waved his hand to signal Su Tong to come over. "Master, are you planning to grow your hair?" Su Tong took a look at Master's hair and asked curiously. "Wear a crown, otherwise the hair band will not be correct. In the past, I could still wear Du Xiren's imperial crown. It was big and comfortable to carry, but now the imperial uniform has been taken back by Du Xiren. There are still a few months until the gate of hell is opened. It is said that he has to go to Yushan to give it to the palace master. Salutations are coming. Even if he goes there and can't even get in, it's just a formality, but when the time comes, he has to wear a hair crown. If he doesn't leave any hair, he can only tie it on his head, and it will become crooked at the slightest movement. Going to Yushan." When Su Tong heard what Master said, he couldn't help but wonder, where is Yushan? Why does the name Fuzun sound so familiar to me? He thought about it carefully, and it seemed that when he died last time, when Lilith and Michael were fighting for him, some god seemed to come and leave in a hurry. I remember that at that time, Hei Bai Vuchain called him Fuzun, but he didn't see what this Fuzun looked like. There is Sumeru in the sky, and there are people who are not careful. There are mountains in the underworld. Yushan is the root of the underworld. It is also the other side of Mount Tai in the underworld. It is the residence of the palace master. As for the palace master, the master paused for a moment and said with a smile, "Actually, you don't need to know so clearly. After all, it is too far away from us. You only need to know that most of the underworld is the land of the mansion. The master is not dealing with him, but feels that the master of the mansion is really too far away from them. Unattainable. No, it should be said that it is difficult to even look up. Although he also has the official position of Yin Cao, and is even a direct subordinate of Du Xiren, the Ghost Emperor, with the authority to oversee Yin and Yang, but based on his rank, he cannot even enter the gate of Yushan Palace. Being able to go to Yushan this time was all for the sake of Du Xiren, the Ghost Emperor. For this reason, he had to grow his hair and wear a crown to show his sincerity, let alone Su Tong. Seeing his master's expression of admiration for this palace master, Su Tong thought for a while and still held back and told his master, "I have seen all the masters you mentioned. Ahem, let's not talk about this anymore. The one I caught last time was pretty good. I gave you something in exchange for it. You can take it back." The master pointed to the box on the table. Su Tong had noticed this box a long time ago. Such a big box wouldn't contain any treasures such as artifacts, right? Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but crack his lips, rubbed his hands, and opened the box with anticipation. I saw the box slowly opening, and a golden light reflected on Su Tong's face. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 548. As the golden light flashed in the box gradually dissipated, Su Tong finally saw clearly the treasure in this huge box. Empty. Su Tong squinted his eyes and took a closer look, stretched out his hand to touch underneath, and saw a piece of yellow paper held on his fingertips. He looked again at the empty box in front of him. I couldn't help but grimace and thought to myself, could it be that I was rewarded with a ball of air? Grandpa Shi, are you sure someone didn't steal it along the way? The master shook his head, no. Then is it still too late for me to download the anti-fraud app? Isn't that what you have? Su Tong put the yellow paper in his hand and looked at it repeatedly. Well, there was indeed not a word on it. When he touched it carefully with his fingers, it still stung his hand. It felt like the paper was too rough to wipe his buttocks. Seeing the disgusted look on his good disciple's face, the master could only sigh and explain, so that this ignorant grandson would not throw the treasure into the fish pond. Don't underestimate that piece of paper. You know the book of life and death. This is it. But strictly speaking, this thing should be called the book of destiny. It reflects the cause, fortune, and longevity of a person's life. Wherever there is life within the three realms, there are 5 immortals within the surrounding heaven, namely heaven, earth, gods, humans, and ghosts. There are 5 insects, cockroaches, scales, hairs, feathers, and insects. Whether he is a human or a ghost, a monster or a monster, his fortune and longevity can all be determined by looking at this book. The master said slowly, lifting the fishing rod in his hand, and saw the strange fish in the fish pond struggling left and right, but refused to be caught. But there's only one picture. Su Tong put the paper in front of his face and looked at it like a mirror for a long time. Not even a shadow came out, let alone Fulu lifespan. It feels light and airy in your hand, and you can't feel any weight at all. This thing is actually a reward obtained in exchange for Hecate? Fortunately, the master said that this thing was a book of life and death, otherwise I would have been afraid of throwing it into the fish pond. The master rolled his eyes at Su Tong. How many more do you want from the book of life and death? Also, don't hold it and shake it, it's not for you to use it. Su Tong stopped shaking and threw it into the prop book. It turned out to be a book of life and death. It's just that except for the 3 words book of life and death, there is not a single punctuation mark for him in the prop book. Just for this page in the book of life and death, I still owe the judge $30,000 as filial piety. By the way, this money will also be charged to you. Ah! The people below don't know the goods, right? I gave them a big yangma, but they still think it's bad. Su Tong was speechless, but then he thought about it. We can't blame the people below for not knowing the goods, the key is that Hecate is really ugly. Thinking of this, Su Tong's eyes wandered. How about I catch a few beautiful ones next time? Can you give me some practical rewards? Master, take a look at the following flavors. Foreign gods love skewers. There are all kinds of them, including cow-headed ones, sheep-headed ones, and snake-headed ones. We can find them all, even if we don't open a dating agency, it would be more profitable. You little brat, if you dare to talk nonsense again, be careful I call your master to come in and beat you. Seeing that Su Tong's words were getting more and more outrageous, as if he was running to find a wife for Niu Tiu Mammon, the master finally couldn't bear it and interrupted him to continue. Seeing that he still had an angry look on his face, the master could only explain, some time ago, I had a dream. In the dream, I saw you dying, so I called the old master to come and we will tell your fortune. What hexagram? Su Tong asked curiously. He had personally experienced the fortune-telling skills of the old Taoist, and he was better than himself. It can't be said. Anyway, the hexagrams are not good, so I asked you for this book of life and death. The purpose is to save your life. Kill me. The master nodded and explained, a town object is different from ordinary things. It can be a brick or a tile, or a few lines of small characters. According to legend, a sophisticated person can create a town with just one sentence. The so-called luck is not a fixed number, life and death, wealth. If the luck declines, even the Dolugo gods will die, and something must be used to stabilize it, which is the safest. With that said, the master pulled him to sit down, holding the fishing rod in one hand, while explaining to him the origin of the Jinwu thing. For example, feng shui, formations, and even architecture all have counterweights, which can affect the weather of the world and influence people's fate and luck. At that time, it was Gong Shiban, Lu Ban himself, who built Zhangyi Tower on the edge of Jianjun. After the building was built, Lu Ban placed a small wooden man carrying a load in the recess of the beam. He placed a grain of rice on each side of the beam to maintain the balance of the wooden man. He left a sentence, "The wooden man will not fall, and the water will not flow." Near Shu. So magical. This is the first time Su Tong has heard of such a strange ability. Yeah. But this technique has long been extinct. Even if there are still some left, it's just a few more withered bones on Buman Mountain. While the master acknowledged the magic of this technique, he could not help but reveal a somewhat sinister and cold expression. After all, although this sect is a great creation, most of the people who can use it are people with evil intentions. If you meet him, kill him if you must. Moreover, this technique is not all that magical. Heaven's cycle of karma and retribution means that even if something is causing trouble, you still have to pay it back when it's time. If you violate the objective laws, you won't get any good results. Just like the Zhangji Tower, after 1,000 years, in the year when Dujianjian burst, before the flood, a large-scale rat plague broke out in Shu. The mice will pull out all the grain you can find and eat it, even if you hide it on the beams. It is said in Haoan Xianhua, there are 120 coins on the beam, which is used to build a town. In addition, Book of Jin, Biography of Xian, miscellaneous poems of Jihai and Mensi by Tan personnel are all involved. Normally, heretics would not use this method, but there is a book dedicated to this technique called Lu Ban Shu. This is what people call the art of hating victory. Oh, this is the art of hating victory. A few days ago, I heard Lao Dao and Zhao San mention it casually. At that time, I didn't understand what the art of hating victory was. When I heard Master say this today, I immediately understood. Well, it's normal for people who are tired of winning and eager to fight, and eventually lose all their wealth and disappear from history. However, this theory of suppressing things is not entirely a method of harming others. It is also the best choice to use it as a self-defense method. The master talked for a long time, then took the tea handed over by Su Tong, took a sip, put the tea on the table, and casually took the page of the Book of Life and Death in Su Tong's hand. With a pinch of his fingers, the page of yellow paper was instantly folded into a small man the size of a palm. Then he grabbed Su Tong's palm and scratched his finger with a single stroke. Blood flowed out for a moment. The master used his finger as a pen and began to write strange characters on the paper figure. The last stroke, one on the left and one on the right, was placed on the paper man's eyes. The paper man immediately seemed to be alive when he clicked on the eyes. The eyes tilted and stared straight at him. Su Tong felt a chill all over his body and had an indescribable feeling. Then he saw the paper man flying up and 3 inches above his head and disappearing without a trace. Disappeared? No. Just waiting for him to activate the life icon and take a look, he saw a little man sitting inside his luck, his figure gradually being wrapped up in his luck. This thing can be integrated into a person's luck just like Dorsey's lucky coin. As soon as this little yellow paper figure sat in his luck, Su Tong immediately felt it. How to describe it? Well, there is a slight sense of restraint, like putting on a pair of underwear on your bare buttocks. Very snug, comfortable, and secure. Unlike Doshi's lucky coin, this thing has no negative impact on himself or the people around him. According to the master, it will only be activated when someone wants to manipulate his luck. In the world, unless it is those heavenly treasures, there is nothing more powerful than the Book of Life and Death. When he thought of this, Su Tong instantly felt that a black kadi was exchanged for a Book of Life and Death. This transaction was indeed worth his own blood. As for whether the master is at a loss or not, haha, Su Tong handed over the tea with a smile. Who knows that this is his master? Anyway, he has no money now. At this time, Su Tong suddenly remembered something. Master, apart from the merits of incense, is there anything else that can harm the gods? He thought about that old woman Thalia, who was still trying to figure out the Devil King under the Inquisition. With her methods, there was no guarantee that this matter would finally come true. But I knew very well in my heart that the Demon King below was definitely still alive. If the Demon King really woke up, broke free, and Thalia slapped her butt and left, they would be the unlucky ones. Thinking of this, it is inevitable that I can't help but feel defensive. This question made the master frown. Don't do this nonsense. It was your luck before that you caught an idea of a little Western god. If you really encounter a ruthless person, running away quickly is the only thing to do. What if I can't run away? I'm in the West now, and I don't have anywhere to burn paper money. Su Tong was not sure in his heart, in this world with a Western background, whether his paper tying skills could invite the Eastern Yin god. If the demons from hell were invited, who would he cry to? The master was silent for a moment, but in the end he couldn't stand Su Tong's insistence. He sighed and said, "Go to your wife about this matter." My wife? Su Tong glared and couldn't help but stepped forward and asked, "Is it even?" "Ahem, ask your master." The master twitched the corner of his mouth, raised his hand and hit Su Tong on the head, picked up the teacup again, and began to urge Su Tong to get out. Yes, with master's posture, Su Tong knew that his master must have something waiting for him. Before leaving, Su Tong did not forget to ask, "Master, what's going on with the tree of the eldest princess?" Seeing Su Tong mentioning the tree, the master sighed inwardly and thought to himself, Lao Zhu's family's country has perished, but their luck is always there. Shaking the fishing rod in his hand, "Hey, what can I say about this? Next time you pass by, take a closer look. There is a rope on it." A rope. As soon as Su Tong thought about it, he immediately understood and planted the old crooked neck tree in his front yard. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 549. He said goodbye to his master, bowed his head and retreated to the door, then turned around and ran off to find his master. As a result, before anyone entered the pavilion, they heard Master Song Lao's shout from a distance, "Good disciple, come here quickly, the tea is almost cold." Looking at his master Mr. Song's pleasant appearance, Su Tong knew in his heart that something was definitely up to him. Although master and master both treat themselves well from the bottom of their hearts. But the roles played by the two people are completely different. Just like the parents at home, when educating their children, one always plays a good role and the other plays a bad role. Obviously, doing bad things will of course fall on the master. Su Tong walked up to his master and greeted him honestly before sitting down carefully. "Good disciple, you got what your master gave you." Mr. Song squinted his eyes and poured half a cup of tea for Su Tong. Su Tong picked it up and took a sip. It tasted very good. After drinking it, he felt light and agile all over his body. However, Su Tong could not be beaten passively this time. He took the initiative and said, "Master, my master said that you found me a wife. Didn't you also make a paper figurine?" Mr. Song was stunned, then waved his hand and said, "You listen to your master's nonsense, how can I have that free time?" Master said you, woo. Good boy, I am your real master. How can you deceive your own master like this?" Mr. Song covered Su Tong's mouth and kept looking inside. Then he lowered his voice and said, "She is not the eldest princess yet. She got the old crooked neck tree this time. She will only become enlightened during this period of time. When the time comes, I need to help her." "Help her? Give me your life? Or let her bite me?" Su Tong shook his head like a rattle. This bitch sucked it down hard. She bit the script several times last time. If it hadn't been for the Lingro blood revitalizing pill, she would have died a long time ago. And what kind of secrets does the old crooked neck tree have, but I haven't noticed it at all. Seeing this, the master gave Su Tong another cup of tea, and then started to explain. Chongzhen was hanged on this tree. After the Manchu emperor entered the customs, in order to appease people's hearts, he gave this tree a seal and called it Sin Locust. This tree has inherited the remnants of the Zhou family's national destiny to a certain extent, and has witnessed the change of times. It already has a sense of luck in itself. It's just that this kind of luck has turned out to be not good luck but bad luck as time goes by. It is precisely for this reason that this tree was cut down after the end of the Manchu dynasty. This fate of defeat came to the grassy forest at the foot of Luofu mountain and turned into an old tree. That is to say, the eldest princess caught up, and this tree was her last Tao fruit. This eldest princess reversed life and death, stole the fate of the country, and stole the dragon's energy. To put it bluntly, she was a moth that parasitized the Ming dynasty. Of course, the Ming dynasty died not because of her moth. After all, this dynasty has been a dynasty since she was born. It is riddled with holes and infested with countless moths. The eldest princess just used the last remaining heat of this rotten ship on herself. Therefore, in the cycle of cause and effect, the key to her ultimate enlightenment should also be found in this tree. Oh, no wonder her temperament has changed so much. Su Tong suddenly realized, then frowned, and said, but what does it have to do with me that she becomes a Taoist? This is the key point. Mr. Song drank a cup of tea. She went against the will of heaven and was born from death. What she lacks is a pure yang qi. Extreme yin creates yang, but that's theoretical, it's not that easy. Therefore, external assistance is needed, and pure yang qi is not difficult to find. Quanzhen Longmen lineage majors in Jindan Dao, and what they cultivate is a pure yang qi. As long as you break through the Grand Master and form a golden elixir in your body, you will have pure yang qi. But the problem is that the eldest princess can't come and ask for it. Just imagine, the blue sky is thousands of miles away, and suddenly the wind is blowing, outside Chunyang Palace. The eldest princess pointed to the little Taoist priest at the door. Hey, please come out, your master, and I will lend them their chastity. I don't know whether Su Tong will agree to it, but I am sure that the old guys in Chunyang Palace can make the eldest princess understand the power of the Quanzhen sword. So for this matter, we can only go to Su Tong. After all, it is convenient, hassle-free, and fast. Old man, aren't you pushing me into the fire pit? Su Tong shook his head repeatedly. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to become husband and wife with her, I just need you to inject a pure yang energy into her. Then wouldn't I be even more at a loss? What do you want? It's okay to help her, but she has to work for me, at least 5 times. Su Tong stretched out his finger. Too many, twice. Mr. Song squinted his eyes and shook his head. You are my master, not my daughter. Why are your elbows turned outward? Mr. Song glared, raised his hand to hit, and said angrily, go back and copy the disciples' rules to me 3 times, just twice. If you agree, you agree. If you don't agree, pay me back. As he spoke, Mr. Song slapped an IOU on the table. Su Tong picked it up and took a look. The handwriting was clearly the master's handwriting, but the content was that he had borrowed 30,000 Ming notes from Judge Kui in his own name. Good guy, feelings are waiting for you here. 3 times, no more. Su Tong was defeated with a helpless face. Well, then 3 times. Mr. Song nodded, finally finalizing the matter. The two drank a few more sips of tea, and Master Song handed a sign to Su Tong. This command arrow is transformed into a ray of soul of the eldest princess. Holding this command arrow not only allows Su Tong to call the eldest princess, but also represents that Su Tong's actions in calling the eldest princess are all under the instruction of the master. Even if it causes any inconvenience, good cause and effect, this cause and effect cannot fall on him. Su Tong put away his things and then stood up to bow to his master. Before leaving, Mr. Song did not forget to say, "Remember to bring me the disciple rules next time." This brat. Seeing Su Tong walking out of the door, Mr. Song looked behind him with a resentful look on his face. He saw the master walking into the pavilion with a smile, taking a sip of tea. "The bad guys want me to come, and I'm worried whether this kid will hate me in the future." Mr. Song sat down with an unhappy look on his face. "I can't come, can I?" Shwegoi crossed his legs and smiled. Mr. Song didn't know how to respond to these words, so he could only change the topic. "The incident with the Jui underworld ghost king last time is over like this? There are no people from above making things difficult for you, right?" Shwegoi was silent for a moment while holding the teacup and then said, "This debt is held by Old Ghost Do and cannot fall on me, but Old Ghost Do asked me to catch 300 evil spirits for him." Hiss. When Mr. Song heard this, his eyes suddenly widened. 300. He thought it was 300 cabbage. Shwegoi glanced at him and said coldly, "Why are you so anxious? If you can't calm down at this age, if he doesn't tell us, we won't arrest you. 300 is an imaginary number, and you can use quality to support it. There is no time limit, so we will arrest you slowly, that's it." After being scolded by Shwegoi, Mr. Song relaxed and thought for a moment, "Where did you get so many evil gods to catch for you?" Shwegoi took a sip of tea, looked out the door out of the corner of his eye, and asked, "The next step for the little guy is to join Taoism. Enter the Tao." The expression on Mr. Song's face changed slightly. "Are you too impatient? How long did it take from when Su Tong became a disciple to when he became a great master? It is too fast to let him enter Taoism now. Mr. Song is worried that Su Tong will not be mentally stable and he will not go crazy when the time comes." In response to this, Shwegoi just curled his lips. "We are originally a heretic. If we are not fast enough, what else can we call a heretic? If I hadn't been unlucky at the beginning, I should have joined the Tao when I was 30 years old." Mentioning this matter, Shwegoi couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Even though he had become a Yin official, his path to immortality was always cut off. "All I can say is that it's no wonder that fate is like this." While the two were talking, the old man opened the door and walked in. "Master, someone from the Bian division is here, saying they want to see the master." Shwegoi and Mr. Song looked at each other. Bian division is under Luo Feng Liuxian. Speaking of Jui Minghui King, he is a member of Luo Feng Liuxian. Thinking of this, the two of them suddenly felt a bad premonition. "Please enter the main hall." "Yes." The old Taoist nodded, turned around and walked to invite people into the main hall. "Master, the person who came here is not good. Do you want to inform Old Ghost Do?" Mr. Song said in a low voice. "What are you afraid of? The soldiers will come to cover up the water and earth. Although the Bian division is big, it can't control us. Let's go and take a look." After that, Shwegoi put on formal clothes and walked into the hall. Early the next morning, Su Tong climbed out of bed early. After drinking a cup of coffee, he took Gandalf's carriage to the market. On the way, Su Tong took a look at the team channel record last night. "I discovered that Domu actually sent a distress signal last night. After reading it carefully, I realized that such a big thing happened in the bull ring yesterday. Master, maybe too many people lost money yesterday. Someone burned down the bull ring last night. It is said that the boss's family was burned to death, and even the ashes were not found. It was really tragic." Gandalf handed him the newspaper as he drove the carriage. Su Tong opened it and saw that the photos and news of the bull ring on fire were on the front page of the newspaper. However, Su Tong, who had read the team records, knew very well who set the fire. "How's Daki?" Su Tong asked in the team channel. After a while, I heard Untu's voice coming from inside. "Fortunately, I was slightly injured. Why didn't I contact you last night?" "Last night, I entered the space between reality and reality, and had tea with my master. Naturally, I was away from the team channel, and it was normal that I couldn't be contacted." Su Tong did not respond directly, only saying that he was in a bad state last night and fell asleep. Although Untu didn't believe this reason, he didn't refute it. In addition, he didn't expect him to come to the rescue in the first place, so he didn't worry about this matter. Mrs. Anman shared the photos from last night. She saw bones all over the ground, both human and animal. The sight of the white bones made people feel numb. It's no wonder that after the people from the strange tribunal came, they simply set the place on fire. After all, such an evil scene could never be made public, not to mention that a miracle had just occurred in Amontes. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was a city blessed by angels. As for the demon that attacked the bull ring last night, Mrs. Amon has already killed it. It is said that in order to kill the demon, Mrs. Amon was forced to change 3 floors. Untu sent a photo on the team channel. It was a black tarot card, but it was also in a damaged state. Looking at this familiar tarot card, Su Tong couldn't help but frowned. Why is it another tarot card? What is the relationship between the people who massacred the bull ring and Matthew and others before? While he was wondering, Gandalf had stopped the carriage. "Master, we are here." Su Tong looked up and saw that the carriage had stopped at the door of the perfume shop. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 550. Jingle. Opening the store door, the business in the perfume store seemed pretty good today. For the first time, there were several ladies here choosing perfumes. When I looked at the door, there were words saying 20% off on some products. No wonder business is picking up. When all the ladies saw Su Tong walking in, they couldn't help but look at the face of this new guy. After all, Kevin definitely looked like a baby boy. Coupled with Su Tong's unique temperament, it is definitely not an exaggeration to say that he is a young woman killer. "Hey, you came so early." Seeing Su Tong, Luke, who was standing in front of the counter, immediately came forward. His expression was no longer as impatient as when they first met. Su Tong even noticed Luke's fear of him. "Well, come early, are things ready? When you're ready, let's go upstairs." Luke pointed to the stairs and motioned Su Tong to go upstairs to trade with Elder Lei. He has to take care of other business downstairs. After Su Tong walked up the steps, Lei was already sitting there waiting for him. After seeing Su Tong, Lei stood up formally and bowed slightly to Su Tong, which made him feel flattered. It is said that he is just a great master, but Lei's realm is definitely above that of the old Taoist, and is already at the level where heaven and man are one. Su Tong felt a little unbearable to have such a top expert salute him. Fortunately, Su Tong's luck was very strong. Not only was he blessed by the title of the church, but he was also protected by the town property, so he was not affected at all. "Master Bishop, please take a seat." Lei politely gestured to Su Tong to sit down first, then took out a small suitcase from his hand and opened it. Inside were 7 bottles of perfume. Each bottle has a different color and scent. And they all seem to be firmly frozen by ice cubes. These perfumes are very powerful magic items, each worth tens of thousands of pounds. When Lei said this, he couldn't help but glance at Su Tong's expression from the corner of his eye. After making sure that he didn't show any embarrassment, he finally breathed a sigh of relief and continued the introduction. "I saw Lei, took out a bottle of perfume and put it on the table. He tapped his fingers lightly on the solid ice outside, and the solid ice immediately turned into a clear spring. This is a perfume made from the tears of aurora fish and unicorn. Spraying it on the body can drive away all negative curses. Ray said, placing the bottle on the table. Su Tong picked it up and looked at the weight. It looked like it could only be sprayed 6 or 7 times. Just such a small bottle costs 100,000 pounds. Even for players like them, this thing is a bit luxurious. But the efficacy is really nothing to say. The removal of all negative status is enough for many players to willingly spend a lot of script points to purchase it. Next, Ray placed several other bottles of perfume on the table. In addition to removing negative effects, there are also ones that increase strength, increase agility, and increase speed. Each of these 3 types is sold for 50,000 pounds in coins. A perfume that can increase lifespan by 3 years after each use costs 400,000 pounds. But the prerequisite is that the elderly and sick cannot use it, otherwise it will take away all their lives in an instant. There is also a perfume that can permanently increase one's resistance to elements, costing 150,000 pounds. The final touch is a perfume called Goddess of Luck, which can be sprayed on your body to increase your luck. Of course it is not permanent and can only be used 3 times. This perfume is the most expensive, costing £1 million. The 7 bottles of perfume cost a total of £1.8 million, and they were not sold individually. This price is Su Tong's. If it were other players, unless they robbed the bank's vault, they wouldn't be able to get such a large sum of money if they were killed. What? Come directly to grab the perfume? The person who came up with this idea is definitely no less intelligent than Wolong Fengxiao. Su Tong took out his checkbook and started writing. He wrote the check and handed it to Lei. Looking at the thick stack of checks, this old man, whose strength was comparable to that of a god, was so excited that he trembled for a moment. In fact, before the transaction was completed, Lei was mentally prepared to sell it at a discount. After all, £1.8 million was enough money to build a large factory. Su Tong always paid attention to the expression on Lei's face. Seeing his happy expression, he was as simple as a farmer uncle who saw the corn in the crop sold at a good price. I couldn't help but sigh secretly in my heart. The same is the unity of heaven and man, but he is not as good as Lei Gao in the realm of Taoism. Why is there such a difference in temperament? If it weren't for the fact that Qi Men, the Minjian, would never have seen it wrong, he would have doubted whether Lei was a fake. In fact, this cannot be blamed on Lei. In recent years, even though the power of the church has weakened a lot, the suppression of these native sects has never relaxed. On the contrary, it has become more severe, for fear that they will resurrect. This makes life very difficult for the Druids. As one of the leaders of the Druids, Lei was forced to think about the livelihood of his people. Now that he was in this field, he could not control his temperament. As the saying goes, a penny beats a heroic man, and he refers to people like Lei. Otherwise, with his strength, it would not be easy to make a fortune. I saw Lei carefully put away these checks. This money was enough for the people in the village to live comfortably for several years. After the transaction was completed, Su Tong put the perfume in the box and threw it directly into the prop book. Then he took a sip of tea and said, "Old man, besides perfume, is there anything else?" After receiving the money, Lei didn't have the airs of an outsider at all, but more like a businessman. He hurriedly said, "Yes, there are furs, high-quality leather, and some furniture, fruits, and herbs, etc. Druids have powerful natural magic, but they will not deliberately destroy nature, especially those rare spiritual objects. Even if they are priceless, they will not easily pick them in exchange for money. After all, in the Druids' worldview, the life of nature is far beyond the comparison of money that smells like copper. That's why there aren't many things they can really take out. After facing this old man who enthusiastically promoted a lot of agricultural products to himself, Su Tong had to smile bitterly and said, "Sorry, I don't like these things very much." Seeing that Bishop Kevin was not interested in his own agricultural products, Lei couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, but as soon as he changed his voice, he immediately made a new invitation to Su Tong. "It doesn't matter. If you are not busy, you can go to our village and have a look. I believe you will like it there. Even though money is full of copper odor, it is undeniable that it has an irresistible charm." Just as Lei looked at Su Tong at this moment, his eyes were much more cordial than the last time. They even hoped that Kevin could enter their village and entertain him well so that he could leave this place of right and wrong. "It is my joy to be able to embrace nature. However, there are some things in the church that I need to deal with recently, so unfortunately I can only wait until next time. The Druids' village is very desirable, but I really can't leave. The messenger sent by the church may be arriving soon. So I can only politely refuse Lei's kindness. That's such a shame." Lei took out an owl from the side and handed it to Su Tong, saying that if Su Tong wanted to go to his village one day, this owl would lead him. "You want to leave?" Su Tong suddenly realized something at this time and hurriedly asked. "Yes, winter is approaching, and the haze in Anmantesli will seriously damage our lungs and respiratory tracts, so I will take the tribesmen in Anmantesli back to the village first, and come out after spring. Thank you again, be generous and you will always be a friend to the Druid." Lei expressed his thanks again, but in his heart he felt sorry for the fate of Bishop Kevin. He had already done his best, maybe this was fate. The dark clouds over Amontes were getting bigger and bigger, and he had a premonition that it wouldn't be long before a terrible disaster would hang over Amontes. This makes Su Tong very regretful. Rather than perfume, he actually wants to know more about the Druid sect and get closer to a strong man like Lei. But I didn't expect that they would leave. But at this time Su Tong got the hint. "You have gained the friendship of the Druid and have been promoted to friendly in the reputation of the Druid section. This can be considered an unexpected gain." Su Tong didn't stay too long before he stood up and prepared to leave. Before leaving, Lei specially gave him a small box and told Su Tong to open it when he got home. The contents inside could be regarded as his little gift. Although he didn't know what was inside the box, he could feel the rich life force inside. After putting the box away and walking out the door, Su Tong got on the carriage, waved goodbye to Lei and left the market. "Let's go." Watching the carriage go away, the smile on Lei's face gradually faded, and he said to Luke beside him, "Notify all clan members to leave as soon as possible." "Leave now?" Luke was startled and saw that there were many products placed on top of the store. If these perfumes were stored improperly, their fragrance would evaporate. "Leave now, immediately, drop everything you are doing, I only have half an hour to wait," Lei said, shaking the thick check in his hand. "With money, nothing else matters." "Okay." When Luke saw the check, his eyes immediately became clear, and he immediately picked up the phone and started to notify other tribesmen. Halfway through, Su Tong slowly opened his eyelids with slightly closed eyes, looked at the owl at hand, and then took out the box Lei gave him. He gently wiped his fingers on the box, glanced left and right, and saw that his fingers slipped and the box fell to his feet. "Oops." Su Tong pretended to be surprised and hurriedly picked up the box, muttering to himself, "Is it not broken?" As he spoke, he opened the box and took a look, only to see a bottle of pink perfume in the box. Out of caution, Su Tong threw the perfume into the prop book and took a look. Kiss of Cupid. It is said that it is a perfume that even the god of love will fall into. Well, but it may not make people feel happy. After use, a strong fragrance will emit from your body, attracting the attention of all creatures around you. Note, this is not a mental attack, nor an illusion, nor a special ability. Seeing the entry in the props book, Su Tong curled his lips. Isn't this an aphrodisiac? But the old guy put this thing in the box and had to open it when he got home. Su Tong couldn't help but feel that this old druid was not as authentic as he thought. At this moment, Su Tong's pupils suddenly tightened and he stared intently at the contents of the box. A familiar invitation letter was lying quietly in the box. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 551. Parking. Su Tong stood up suddenly with the invitation, but after a moment, he sat down again with a bitter smile on his face. Glancing at the owl in the cage next to him, Su Tong couldn't help but said to himself, "Sure enough, it's the ginger or the old one that is hotter. Why didn't I notice it at all? You, a druid with thick eyebrows and big eyes, can hide better than everyone thinks." As the 12th Cardinal Archbishop, Arashia, regardless of his strength, died near Amontes. According to the church's rules, Amontes would definitely be investigated in all aspects. Su Tong didn't believe that this archdruid, whose strength was comparable to that of a heavenly being, had not been noticed by the church. But the church has never suspected that he was involved in Arashia's death. This guy has put himself out there from the beginning, and no one will doubt that a druid who even has trouble eating would dare to get involved in such a big thing. Putting yourself on the bright side is tantamount to the highest form of concealment. This couldn't help but remind Su Tong of a case many years ago, when an escaped murderer absconded into City L and opened a bun shop next to the local police station. He had been driving under the nose of the police for more than 10 years without anyone noticing, and the wanted criminal was actually right under his nose. In the end, when he was quarreling with others over his wife, he casually shouted, "My man has killed people, I don't care, kill 2 more." It was this sentence that caught the attention of the bun-eating policeman, and then the stuffing was leaked. Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but laugh again. It's really interesting. He opened the invitation and saw a note inside. There were only 6 words written on the note: "The Lord of God was born in Judah." Judah. It is said that the Lord of God was betrayed by his own believer, Jewar, and was finally crucified on the cross. Later, Jewar regretted and chose to commit suicide. It is said that after Jewar's death, no one cared about his body until it decomposed and turned into a pool of black water. This story can be said to be known to every household. Even the church manual that Evelyn gave herself before had records in it to warn future generations. But now, Lay actually wrote such a paragraph on the note. With this invitation letter and this note, with his own identity, he can impose the harshest sanctions on the entire Druid sect. So, why did Ray do this? Just when he was confused, Gandalf on the side finally couldn't help but asked, "Master, are we still going? If we don't go, this road will be blocked." It turned out that as soon as Su Tong finished speaking, Gandalf ignored that the carriage was driving on a narrow side road, so that the already narrow road became even more crowded. After Gandalf mentioned this, Su Tong came to his senses, nodded and motioned for Gandalf to continue walking, and casually threw the invitation into the prop book. Ding, main mission 2, 4 invitations completed. With the reminder that the task was completed, the whole team's mood was lifted. Questions immediately came from the team channel: who found the 4th invitation letter and how? Are there any other clues left? It's no wonder Untu is so anxious. Although the witch diary from last time basically confirms that he is not the real culprit who killed Aerith. At least definitely not a direct participant. But that alone was not enough, he needed to get conclusive evidence. The 4th invitation is undoubtedly the key to everything. Su Tong thought for a while, and after confirming that there were really no other clues, he sent the content of the note in his hand to the team channel, and added, "There are no clues. The other party only gave me the sentence and invitation card." "How so?" Entu's face gradually became gloomier when he got the answer from Su Tong. "I thought that the 4th invitation letter would bring conclusive evidence, but it turned out to be just such a useless sentence." This made Untu's heart drift over thousands of things. Although this task is not the main plot, it is crucial to him. It is said that the messenger sent by the church this time is not only to reward Libo, but also to thoroughly investigate himself. If he cannot find more powerful evidence as soon as possible, his mission will be considered a failure. By then, even if he will not become the target of the church's purge, he will definitely be deprived of all his privileges, and the status advantage he has gained at a huge cost will be completely wasted. The Lord of God was born from Judah? Is this implying something? Unto sat at the table, lit a cigarette for himself and put it to his mouth. In fact, he didn't smoke before, but since he became a player, smoking has become his spiritual food. Looking at the clouds of smoke on the table, Unto felt more and more upset the more he thought about it. He tapped his fingers on the table unconsciously, and his eyes began to gradually become wandering. Even if that anxious mood is not shown on his face, every detail of his actions exudes this aura. This made the administrator of the archives nearby feel on pins and needles for a while. It didn't feel like I was sitting in a file room, but rather like I was sitting in a warehouse filled with powder barrels. Even a tiny wisp of flame could blow me up into the sky to meet the God Lord. Bang bang bang. At this time, there was a knock on the door, which made the administrator nervous for a moment. After opening the door, he saw Art standing outside. Art glanced at the administrator's nervous expression suspiciously, and then walked up to Unto. Lord Unto, we have already investigated clearly what you asked us to investigate. This is my report and my collection of clues about the case. Oh. Looking at the file that Art handed over, Unto raised his eyebrows slightly and immediately took it over, tore open the file bag and started to read through it. Art continued. A fire in the market a few days ago burned many people. When our people went in to investigate, they found many dismembered corpses inside. After comparison, it was determined that the death of Aritia was related to that of Matthew. The butchers have a very close relationship. At this time, Unto suddenly stretched out his hand, interrupted Art's words, and then said without raising his head, "No need to talk about the process, I can see it myself, give me your conclusion." Yes. Art nodded heavily, then swallowed and said firmly. We conclude that the death of Archbishop Aritia was not a homicide, but a suicide. As soon as Art said these words, the administrator on the side had a cerebral hemorrhage and was about to have a cerebral hemorrhage. There are 12 cardinals in Aritia, whose status is second only to the Pope. They are undoubtedly the most pious people to the Lord of God, and no one dares to question their piety to the Lord of God. And Art dared to say that Aritia committed suicide. You must know that in the canon, suicide is an unforgivable crime. God, doesn't he know what this sentence means? The cardinal's suicide, whether true or false, is a scandal that the Church cannot accept. How dare he say it? For a moment, the administrator held his breath involuntarily, feeling that his heartbeat was about to jump to his throat. But Art's conclusion is much more than that. Not only was it suicide, but Aritia completed some kind of summoning ritual by committing suicide. I suspect that Archbishop Aritia has betrayed his faith and the Lord of God. His death is the inevitable result. After Art finished speaking, he heard a bang behind him. The administrator obviously couldn't accept such horrific remarks and passed out professionally. Art ignored him when he saw this. He knew the consequences of his words. Even after the investigation report was written, the entire team members were opposed to him submitting the report. But Art insisted on submitting the report. Because of this report, other detective teams had actually made it, and he was not the only one who came to the conclusion of the investigation. But no one dared to submit such a report, so they could only continue to investigate. As a result, the investigation became more and more chaotic, and the entire Inquisition was completely spinning in circles. In Chen's words, the wisest way is to let the Church's senior leaders realize that Aritia's death was a suicide, rather than handing it over themselves. Because of this, Art felt that he could no longer continue to revolve around this vicious circle. Art risked his life and fortune to submit this report. Perhaps in the eyes of others, this was childish and stupid behavior. But this is the biggest persistence in Art's heart, and it is the oath he swore when he joined the divine catcher. Fairness, justice, and faith in the Lord of God always run through Art's heart, even if this report will cost him his life. So at this moment Art is also waiting for trial. As long as Mr. Unto moves his finger next, he may be labeled as a heretic and will never get out of here. Time passed by minute by second, and Unto was not in a hurry to deny his conclusion. Instead, he read line by the light of the iron window behind him. The misty sunlight shone on Unto's hair, and except for the sound of reading, everything was extremely quiet. Until Unto saw the last page. Art actually saw the look of relaxed brows on his face. Very good. Unto slowly placed the file on the table and gave his evaluation in a soft voice. Art slowly let go of his fingers, but then clenched them tightly, looking directly into Unto's eyes. After confirming that this was not the eve of a storm, a smile finally appeared on his face. But what he didn't know was that he was not the only one who felt relaxed. Looking at the file in his hand, Unto felt unprecedentedly relaxed for no reason. He knew that his mission this time was about to be completed. Only after Art left did Unto stand up and glance at the unconscious administrator on the ground. Contact Archbishop Evelyn, I want to see him. Yes. The administrator quickly got up from the ground and quickly picked up the phone on the table.